John!
What?
Red 7!
I don't know what Red 7 means.
Hot route!
I don't. What is hot route?
Will you just go stand on the other side, please?
Down!
Come on.
Ready, down, set, hut, 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 hut!
Hit me! Booyah! That's what we call a sack lunch. Nom, 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 nom.
It's time for the Soonerscoop.com postgame show. Now, here's your road crew, Carey, Eddie, and Bob, wrapping up all the action and reaction from this week's game.
All right, welcome back. It is the Eskridge Lexus postgame show right here on Soonerscoop.com, and we are sort of live from Dallas. We're doing something that we've never done before. I'm actually on the road back to Norman. Bob Przbillo is still in the press box finishing up our stories. Eddie Radosevich, who was blocked, Horns Up for Peace, was, I don't know, do we want to make it out like there was a boycott of Horns Up for Peace, Eddie? And that they wouldn't let you in the press box today?
I guess something like that, but I would think that probably the best way to say it is it worked out pretty well. Maybe that was the plan all along.
So all games from here on out, just me and Bob. Eddie will stay at home. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, whatever's clever for the fan base.
I don't believe in jinxes. I hate that stupid Dr. Pepper commercial where the guy gets arrested for jinxing the kicker. I don't believe in that stuff. I have friends that sit in one spot and watch OU games with OU helmets on because they think it helps. It doesn't help. I don't believe that it helps.
I don't know if anything could help today. I mean, my God.
What a shit show. Like, I went to my own personal account, left the Scoop account, went to my own. But by the way, Sooners went in quadruple overtime today, 53-45, in just a... God, I mean, at one point, Eddie, it was 31-17, and you thought, wow, Oklahoma finally did it with 4.5 minutes to go. They have finally put together the complete game. It took 2 losses to get us here, but this team really now understands what it means to play a full fucking football. Oh, God damn it. Look at that. Sam Ehlinger. Touchdown. Oh, what the hell? Okay, so it's 31-24. Surely they learned their lesson. Surely, oh, here goes an onside kick. Okay, they didn't get. I mean, like it fell apart, Eddie, in the last 4 minutes of the game, and you felt like you were right back in the last 2 weeks.
It was everything that you've seen as far as Oklahoma being really good at times. Then you saw things being like it was an incomposition of everything that Oklahoma has done in the first 3 weeks of the season, all boiled down into like it seemed like separate quarters. It was unbelievable. I mean, that is probably one of the best OU Texas games, regardless of how you want to look at it. It was one of the best OU Texas games of all time. And then when you throw in the fact that kind of what you said, as far as being up 14, losing that lead, going to overtime, probably not even being the team that wanted to be in overtime, and you know,
and you also thought that there was no way that Oklahoma was going to win that game when it started going into overtime.
Oh my God,
how is this team going to score a touchdown, and how are they going to stop Texas from scoring a touchdown with all the momentum that the Longhorns had?
It was just incredible. And, like, I was a little surprised that when they scored at the end of regulation, I was a little surprised they didn't think about going for 2.
I did too. I did too. Or that OU didn't think about going for 2.
Sure. And then just the way that it all went down in the overtimes with the block kick, Burkich.
Oh, my God. Burkich just choking it away. I mean,
off the way, Carey.
That's the one thing I never saw.
Rattler got benched in the first half.
No, he did. He absolutely did. In place of Tanner Mordecai, who was good for like a couple of series, but then pretty soon you knew, like, okay, Tanner Mordecai is not the answer here. Just keeping the ball away from Texas is not going to win this game. And if Lincoln Riley did not put Spencer Rattler back in, they would not have won the game.
It was absolutely incredible. And you know what? I mean, as much doubt, criticism, or whatever you want to call it that's been on the Oklahoma defense at times, they were pretty good today. I thought Isaiah Thomas had a really good game.
Well,
and,
you thought you thought that Woody Washington salted it away with his pick in the tremendous pickoff in the end zone, where he was actually a step behind. I can't even remember the receiver for Texas. I don't know if it was Moore or who it was, or Eagles, but the receiver had a step on him. It was a little bit underthrown. He made up ground quickly. He went up, high pointed it, took it away from the receiver, and you're like, okay, this defense finally did it. Like, they are going to win this game. Like, I wanted to almost just call ball game right then and there, and then OU comes out, and that reverse to Theo Wease that was just a disaster. They go 3 and out. They give the ball right back to Texas, and here you go. The defense just falls apart going down the stretch.
It was incredible. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. Just a pretty gutsy performance. And, you know, Carey, I don't know, like, the big picture takeaway, but what a massive win that is for the program. Because if you lose that and you walk out of there having lost in overtime, knowing that you had a 14-point lead, you're 1-3 going into a bye week. I mean, there can be a shit ton of negativity and criticism that could infiltrate that locker room. But, you know, I credit to them, and I think Riley said it after the game. They were able to persevere through it, and, you know, at the end of the day, that's a massive, massive win. And how cool is it that, I guess technically, Drake Stoops ends up having the game-winning touchdown, and it's sealed by a Trey Brown interception at the end of the fourth overtime. I thought those were pretty cool moments.
I mean, Spencer Rattler saved his best for overtime. I mean, that's the way that I look at this game. He did some nice things throughout the game to help build that 31-point lead, but he did more harm than good. In the overtime, the throw to Stogner, the throw to Stoops, the throw that Rambo dropped in the corner was a great pass.
Sure.
And then there was another drop. I think Stogner dropped it over the middle. I think that was when they ended up punching it in on 4th and inches. But I will say this. Kudos to the offensive line today. They played their asses off. They played physical. They blew Texas off the ball at times. They made big holes for a couple of running backs that are not your premier running backs. Seth McGowan being out of the game today. You didn't know how that was going to go. Marcus Major did some of the best stuff that we've seen him do as a running back. Like, everybody was so down on him coming into this game. He did enough today where I think everybody can look at him now and say, let's put Marcus in there, see what he could do right now if everything's kind of stalling.
Yeah, and, you know, I guess overall you could also say that there's no doubt about it that TJ Pledger took the reins as the number 1 running back on this team today. A couple stats from the game. Spencer Rattler goes 23 of 35. Obviously had the 1 interception, 209 yards, 3 touchdowns. TJ Pledger is the sole rusher over 100 yards today. 22 carries, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Impressive.
He actually averaged 6 yards a carry.
And he punched in 2 from the 1-yard line, which a lot of people, I mean, that's been an issue all year long. And
Yeah,
OU got down at the goal line several times today, and they were able to punch it in, except for that first drive where they ended up with a field goal.
Yeah, I was surprised that Riley settled for a field goal there early. And, you know, you go all the way back to the overtimes, and they go for it on the 4th and 1 when Rattler's marked short after the review. And, I mean, thank God Tom Herman called the timeout there before the snap, or as the snap was happening, because they go into what looks to be a play action there, and I don't think anything was open. And you never know if, like, you just never know how that play is going to work out if they're actually able to run it. But the timeout, then they're able to come back out, punch it in, and kind of the rest was history. So it was a gutsy performance, man. As much shit as I talked about on the U40, on the boards, on the radio throughout the week, they handled a lot of adversity today, whether it be the 3 turnovers in the first half, which was a first since I believe it was 2016 in the Texas game, and then, you know, just everything else that happened, and the way you could have easily rolled it over in the fourth quarter after Texas kind of takes the momentum there with 18 seconds left. But, I mean, they fought and they punched back a couple times, and I think you kind of see like a little bit of a mentality there. I know the Oklahoma fans are going to be unhappy with how they finished the regulation, but just to be able to walk out of there with a win, a dramatic win at that, I think that, you know, for a lot of those young players, that's going to prove to be a big kind of a jumping off point or a building point here moving forward. We'll see. And they go into a bye week. You've got to take that into Fort Worth in 2 weeks. But it will be interesting to see how they can kind of build off of a dramatic kind of come from behind victory, if you will.
Well, and I think one of the things today offensively that I loved, and something I've been calling for all year, was that at one point in the game, Spencer Rattler and Theo Wease really got some chemistry going, and we haven't seen that all year, especially, and you don't know how Rattler's going to handle that after he had that really bad drop against Iowa State where he just put it right in the breadbasket and went right through his hands. But he was a first down machine. Theo Wease was for Spencer Rattler for a while. And I liked how, they kept going to Stogner in the overtimes. I mean, that showed something that we've been calling for a long time, which is just force feed him the ball after we saw what Iowa State did to Charlie Kolar a week ago. So I think you do have some things to build on as an offense. Your hope is that Spencer Rattler has now gone through this. He's faced some adversity. He got better as the game went along after some really disappointing parts of the fourth quarter. And he was the reason that they won that ball game today, other than, the interception by Trey Brown, good for him. Yes, you're pulling your hair out because Pat Fields had a bunch of penalties today again. I don't know how legitimate. So, like the interception that Trey Brown had, I don't know. You and Josh were both talking about it. I wasn't in front of a television, and the replays in stadium, as everybody knows, not the greatest. But I never saw where a hold was on Trey Brown. I just saw him step in front of the break on the route, step in front of the receiver, catch the ball, and they overturned the interception. I mean, Trey Brown, his career is overturned interceptions, isn't it?
Yeah, that was I don't want to be that guy, but that was a terrible call. There were
the Asamoah missed hold.
Terrible. I just don't know how you miss that kind of stuff. It'd be a bigger deal if they go on to lose the game, I suppose. But there were a couple, and even a couple of the PIs. It's hard to tell on television. But
there were absolutely a couple. One that sailed out of the end zone that was uncatchable. There were a couple that were definitely uncatchable that PIs were called. And I know the question that everybody has is about the clock, the time that was added when Sam Ehlinger went out of bounds and they reviewed it and it was a first down and then overturned it. Everybody was telling me that, on the TV replay, it was 5:59 when he stepped out of bounds and they added the clock back to 6:36. I'm going to have to go back and look at the TV copy myself just to see when that play happened. But that is an error that should not have happened, and Lincoln Riley was not asked about it after the game. I'm sure that's something he'll be asked about this week, especially being a bye week like it is.
Sure.
But that's a head scratcher if they added an extra 37 seconds onto the clock, because obviously that helped Texas a lot in the end.
No doubt about it. And Carey, is it just as simple enough to say Spencer and Rattler and Theo Wease, they grew up a little bit today? I thought that the 8-minute drive there in the third quarter that basically started with about 9:40 left and took until about the 1-minute mark of the third quarter, that included a couple big runs. It included two massive throws from Rattler to Theo Wease on third down, 3rd and 9, and I believe it was a 3rd and 10. It just, you could see that them growing up a little bit, and I think that, that especially considering the way that the first quarter went and everything that went into the first half for Spencer Rattler, I think we might have learned a little bit about him. He could have easily, I guess in a way, hung his head because, the reality is he did get benched in the first half. And I just thought that, overall, you take away certainly all the positives out of that game, more so than look at kind of the negatives as far as what didn't happen or what they weren't able to do.
Yeah, and I think, they won the game. That's, if they played like shit against Kansas State, they played like shit against Iowa State. They lost both of those games. And you knew if a couple things happened here or there and they won, no one would be happy, but you'd move on and you wouldn't, it's been chaos on the boards. Just absolute chaos. And I understand it. And Josh and I this week, we keep getting these PMs from people that I've banned or had to ban. And it's like people apologizing like, yeah, I was super drunk. I regret I ever did that. That's embarrassing. I hope you'll forgive me and let me back. Like, it has been rough on the fan base. It has not been easy. And had they lost this game today, I don't want to know what the next 2 weeks were going to be like. Now, there's going to be the standard complaining and griping and belly aching and all that stuff. But a win cures a lot. And a win over Texas is absolutely what you needed, not to have a 3-game losing streak. Because let's face it, Eddie, if Lincoln Riley had lost this game today, he would have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And that's the worst possible thing that happened. And that would have had everybody questioning not just this game, but questioning Lincoln Riley as a coach overall. Like, where is he taking this program? He is not Bob Stoops. He's too concerned with his, making his players happy instead of coaching, which all that stuff is going to be said because he's Lincoln Riley and he's young and he's a head coach and he's facing his first adversity as a head coach. But my God, the weight that it lifts off of his shoulders from just a public perception standpoint is enormous.
Lincoln Riley is just the second head coach in Oklahoma history to win at least 4 of his first 5 games against Texas. Obviously, he's now 4-1. Obviously, he's joining Bob Stoops in doing that, who won his first 4 or 5 against Texas. And, it was just incredible. Which way do you want to go on this now, Carey? You want to talk about Oklahoma's defensive line? The defense records 6 sacks in the game and 10 tackles for loss, which was actually combined with the 9 from last year, 15 in the last 2 seasons and 25 tackles for loss in the last 2 seasons against Texas. Or I could go and talk about Sam Ehlinger, because as much as people dislike the guy and he's now 1-4 against Texas, that dude's a gamer, man. He kept that team and basically willed that team
he really
down
did.
the field in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he was their heartbeat. I mean, he's really good. But I'll say this, the 6 sacks that was announced after the game, that's the first time in the history that the Sooners have had back-to-back games against Texas where they've compiled 6 sacks or more.
Unbelievable.
So I mean, give
Mike
Jamar Cain, give Calvin Thibodeau a lot of credit. I know Josh had tweeted this during the game. There was a small movement from a rumor mill website that's been trying to rip on Calvin Thibodeau and say that he needs to be replaced because I think they're friends with Jerry Montgomery or something. But I mean, it was just completely a fantastic performance once again by sorry, I'm in a traffic situation here. Again, we're doing the pod like never before. I'm actually driving home. Eddie is back in Norman. No videographers were allowed today in the press box because there's no video shooting from the field or anything like that. So I am headed home. Bob is finishing up his writing in the press box. So we've never really done it like this before. It's a little bit different, but I think it's going okay so far. But Eddie, I mean, the defensive line, they've been the stars of this defense. And I don't know that that's really the story of the defense. To me, the story is Alex Grinch working in a lot of young guys, Woody Washington being one of the stars today, playing corner even. And then you saw a lot of other faces out there. You saw Trey Norwood playing in place of Delarian Turner, which was kind of odd. But you did see Jeremiah Cradell. You saw Joshua Eaton out there. You saw a lot of young faces today, and they all seemed to play really, really well.
They showed up, and you definitely didn't see the tackling issues that Oklahoma had a week ago or even 2 weeks ago. I thought for the most part that got shored up, and it's like you said, Carey, with 5 minutes left, they'd given up 17 points to a team that, I mean, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but they were averaging 51 points a game going into the game today. So I know that that was kind of inflated with the performance in Lubbock for Texas, but at the same time, they've been scoring a lot of points, and you'd only given up 17. So overall, I thought that group, and you know what,
and
the biggest thing
Texas could not run the football. I mean, outside of Ehlinger freelancing, I mean, the defensive line just stuffed their run all day.
And they didn't give up the massive big play today.
Nope.
I think that's the biggest takeaway. They didn't give up the big play today, and that's something you can build off of. I mean, that's how bad it was a week ago. So did they put together 4 quarters today? No, certainly not. It seemed like they put together 7 quarters if you add in all of the overtimes. But, I mean, they came up in the special teams. Obviously outside the Burkich miss, which just could have been absolutely catastrophic. But you did block a punt today. You didn't have anything bad in the return game. So it was incredible. It was a fun watch is what it was. What was it like in the stadium today?
Oh, that press box, you've been in it before. It is vacuum tubed.
Sure.
So even when it's a full stadium, you can hear the back and forth. But you could hear the OU sucks chants from Texas. It was interesting because toward the end of the game, both sides, they kind of decided, like, F this. We're going down as close as we can to the field, and we're all going to gather. There was no social distancing when the overtime started because Texas fans, and I think it was mostly students, but they crowded down to the field. Texas was the same way. OU's crowd was a little bit larger. But they definitely had an impact on the game. They could be heard, and the momentum that, flipped, especially, with that last 4 minutes. Those Texas fans, I'll give it up to them. They always show up late, but they stay and stay, unless it's 63-14. They stuck around, and they made a lot of noise. So, it was a decent atmosphere. It wasn't anything like a normal OU Texas atmosphere, but the people that were there brought it. I'll say that.
What did you think of the 4th down call? I know that there's going to be a lot of people that kind of talk about, or not 4th down, but the
third down, the
call,
throwing it instead of running it.
I don't hate it. We're bitching and complaining about him not being aggressive on, first and or forcing goal.
Let me ask you, was the pass a little behind Stogner?
It was catchable. I'll say that. It should have been caught.
Because he bobbled it, and then he kind of grabbed it, but he juggled it, and he just never could quite come down with it.
It kind of ricocheted in his hands a little bit, if that makes sense.
Look, it's a lot better than, running TJ Pledger on 3rd and 25. Or whatever that was.
Sure.
But, no, I could see both sides. Texas only had 1 timeout left. They probably weren't going to use it there. Try and save it. You could have taken 40 more seconds off the clock. Hindsight is 20/20. He should have run it there, knowing what we know now. But that's what everybody was so critical of Lincoln Riley and how conservative he got. He actually went for it at that point. So I guess this should be the rule. If you ever bitch today about him not opening up or being too conservative, becoming old Bob, then you can't bitch about him going for it on 3rd down with a pass.
And that's not to say that, Lincoln Riley and I guess you could maybe even throw Grinch in there a little bit, but that's not to say that neither of those guys shouldn't have some criticism because, the way that the 4th quarter went, of course they're going to need some criticism. I didn't like the reverse on 3rd and 5 to Theo Wease, but then again, if it works, everybody says what a call to put an ice on the game.
By the way, I want to remind you guys, the post-game podcast, the Eskridge Lexus post-game podcast, brought to you by Eskridge Lexus of Oklahoma City. At Eskridge does a great job helping to support the podcast. So if you can, we always appreciate you trying to support Eskridge Lexus. Go to eskridgelexus.com. A lot of new 2021s coming in. We drove the all-wheel drive 2021 ES 350 to Iowa State last week, and it was a fantastic car. I love those cars. They're absolutely fantastic. I know the new ISs are coming out, the 2021s. Very popular car, along with the RXs, the sport utility vehicle that is the highest selling. Go check them out, eskridgelexus.com, and let them know you listen to the Sooner Scoop podcast. Tell them that you want the Sooner Scoop special, and you'll get a better deal than everybody else just because you listen to the Sooner Scoop podcast if you go visit eskridgelexus.com. So thanks to Ed and everybody over there for continuing to support the podcast. Now, Eddie, I think one of the things about the defense today, Ehlinger made all the plays with his feet. That was the backbreaker, and that's what you expect going into playing a game against Texas, a big rivalry game, a game where teams were pretty evenly matched. I think you got to give a lot of credit to the secondary for just blanketing their receivers, because a lot of times today, Ehlinger had to pull it down because there was just simply no one to throw to, especially the majority of the game.
No, I thought the Oklahoma secondary did pretty well. And even on the plays that, even in the first half when Buki was called for the pass interference, either the one in the end zone, that's a tough call. That's a tough way to go out, because I thought he had decent coverage on the guy. I thought Jaden Davis had a pretty good day today.
He did.
And you know what the most important thing is you didn't look out there and go, oh God, Josh Eaton just got burned on something, or Woody Washington didn't cover his guy. It was the exact opposite. It was Woody Washington coming up with the big play in the fourth quarter. So overall, much improved from a week ago. You have to give it up to that group, because they've been kind of the whipping boy, if you will, for the Oklahoma fan base, and even for us, or myself at least, in that group for sure. But I thought that they bounced back today, and overall there was a lot of things that you really had to like with what Oklahoma was able to do there in the secondary. And even there were points though that I will say that Texas receivers were open and leading up in for the first, second, and third quarters at least, that Ehlinger just missed them. He just flat out missed some guys early in that game. And, it is what it is. You live to see another day.
Yeah, and boy, Woody Washington, I mean, I don't know how you can't be excited about that kid. I mean, he's come in, he's played corner. It's been a really long time since OU has had someone that versatile, that athletic, that can play multiple positions and can make plays. I mean, how long has it been since, it's really been since Trey Brown probably and Trey Norwood were true freshmen, that you've seen young kids come in and make plays, and certainly not make plays in that big of a game. I guess, Brown and Norwood were doing it in Bedlam back in the day, but that is the first time we've seen a young player step up and make game-changing plays in a very, very long time in the secondary.
It's been a while since I've seen somebody make a play like he did in the end zone there with, 6 minutes left or whatever it was on the interception. That was, I even tweeted it at the time, but that's why you go recruit the best players. That's why you go recruit guys or go into SEC country. He was the number one player in Tennessee for a reason, and I can't imagine the type of confidence that you take out of that game if you're Woody Washington in making a play like that to put your team in position like he did today.
And he's got to be on the field, all the time. Alex Grinch, he played dime a lot today. And the combinations that he had out there, I couldn't believe how many DBs were on the field at one time. It was like Trey Norwood and Buki and Fields and Jaden Davis and Woody Washington. And it seemed like there were like a couple more. It was just like he was throwing all kinds of shit out there today as a defense. And I'll be honest, the whole thing about Eagles being 6'4", that never really reared its head. It never really hurt them. Well, Eddie, let's switch gears a little bit. Special teams have been a problem for Oklahoma. Obviously, Gabe Burkich's missed field goal. Now, that's something I'm sure people will question, why did you do that? If they had lost the game, everybody would have been asking, why did you do that on second down, and not just try and go ahead and score the touchdown? But fortunately for Lincoln Riley, they end up winning the game. But the Marvin Mims, there's another freshman for you in this game, stepping up, making a huge play in the punt return game. And he had some nice catches early, but you almost feel like this receiving corps is kind of starting to round out into difference makers, one being Stogner. Wease had a good day today. Drake Stoops just has a penchant for coming up with big plays. Marvin Mims has had some big plays. But, outside of that, Charleston Rambo could have been a lot better, should have been a lot better. For me, Eddie, he just kind of continues to fall down the list in guys that are making plays out there as receivers.
Yeah, Rambo finishes the day with 2 receptions for 16 yards. There was actually 9 different guys that caught receptions today. Obviously, two of those being H-backs and Jeremiah Hall and Austin Stogner. Well, I guess 3 of them. Jeremiah Hall, Austin Stogner, and Mikey Henderson all caught a ball, and then TJ Pledger, obviously. But, I walk out of that game, Carey, and I think Theo Wease took a step to being the number one receiver on this football team. And if you can get that out of him, the big catches that he was able to have, and he didn't necessarily light up the stat book either, finishes the day with 8 receptions for 50 yards, but you just take some confidence out of that group, and you think that maybe Rattler found some guys that he can trust late in games, and you certainly saw that with Stogner, obviously. Drake made the big play, actually the game winner. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to go stock down, it's hard not to, and I hate to kill the kid, but Charleston Rambo he's not that guy, Carey. He's just not that guy. I mean, we've seen 4 games now. We've seen 3 against Division I opponents, and he just isn't. I mean, the development, his ability with the ball in his hands, or even to catch the ball, it's just not there. And I don't know any other way to.
I mean, to me,
I walk out of there though thinking that they really found something in Theo.
Yeah, and to me, Rambo is not a possession receiver. He's a receiver that you send down the field, and you try and hit a shot, and maybe he gets behind the defense. But as a guy that you throw a lot of short stuff to, I continue to say this over and over. I don't feel it with him. I don't get it with him. So.
And you know what? Maybe the best thing for Charleston Rambo would be taking a little bit of pressure off of him and him not having to be that guy. Maybe the development of a Theo Wease or a Marvin Mims, even if they could step up and they're comfortable in that position to be that guy, maybe Charleston Rambo starts to shine a little bit more if he doesn't have to have that pressure going into a game thinking, God, I have to put up some big numbers for Spencer today.
All right, so Eddie, I mean, this team now sits at 2-2, heading to the bye week. Now, I don't know, you want to update us? Because I'm not even sure what happened in the rest of the Big 12. I think Iowa State won pretty easily today.
Yeah, Iowa State ends up beating Texas Tech up in Ames 31-15 today. Surprisingly, and I guess I don't know if I should say surprisingly, but I was surprised. A final from Fort Worth was Kansas State actually going down and knocking off TCU. Let me get the final score pulled up here. I believe TCU tacked on a late touchdown and then wasn't able to do much after that. But Kansas State goes down to Fort Worth and wins 21-14 today. From what I saw, Max Duggan was not very good. But yeah, those were the only 3 games. Obviously, Oklahoma and Texas, probably your most talked about game out of the Big 12 today. Around the country, I thought A&M was they were surprising today. Kellen Mond played really well, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns. They kick a field goal to beat Florida late. Alabama is playing down in Oxford right now. It's 7-7 in a monsoon. And then Auburn, right before we started recording, Carey, they knock off Arkansas with a late field goal.
Wow.
And what was a ending that will be talked about for probably the next week. Flat out, Arkansas got screwed on a call late in the game.
Well, I mean, I guess the possibility is there that the 3 best teams in the Big 12 are Kansas State, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State now.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any other way that you can look at it. I mean, obviously, Iowa State lost to TCU, so Kansas State and Oklahoma State undefeated, right?
Correct.
And those are the only 2?
Well, yeah, in league play, yeah.
Yeah, so unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And, I mean, Oklahoma, we're certainly not going to sit here and talk about them making a bid to get back into the Big 12 championship picture just yet. But, I mean, again, I kind of sound like a broken record. I just can't overemphasize the way that Oklahoma was able to win for that young group of core players. That has to do something going into a bye week rather than the opposite side of that, of you sitting there for 2.5 weeks, basically, kind of wondering where the program's going at 1-3 if you lose that game today.
This is something I want to bring up. I brought this up before the game started. I'm sitting there watching, doing the pregame thread. Got derailed by Ronnie Perkins' discussions, of course. And I'm watching all these groups huddle. I'm watching the defensive line, and Isaiah Thomas is in the middle, barking orders at everybody, getting them motivated, ready to play. I'm looking at other areas of the field, and I look over at defensive backs. And who's in the middle of the huddle commanding it? Justin Broyles, which great kid. We love Justin Broyles. We said, we were kind of heartbroken for what he went through at the LSU game last year. But at the same time, I'm like, Pat Fields is your captain. And that just kind of goes to show you that this secondary, even though they have some experience with Buki, with Trey Brown, with Pat Fields, Delarian Turner-Yell, those aren't really natural leader type guys. And I mean, the one thing I think you can take if you're a Sooner fan from this season, the pandemic season 2020, is if this team can continue to play like they did the first 3.5 quarters today, they're going to get some experience. They're going to get some guys that are playmakers that are going to come back a year from now and be ready to make that defense something special. And with that defensive line continuing to build, Perry Winfrey, I thought had a really good game today. That defensive line just pressured and pressured and pressured. And I don't know what's going to happen to Ronnie Perkins. I don't know, depending on Isaiah Thomas, what was the deal with his shoulder or arm at the end of the game. We'll find out, hopefully. I don't know what the future holds for Ronnie Perkins after everything that's gone on the last couple of weeks. And, his status with the NCAA is now up in the air. We'll see what happens. But, man, I mean, the one thing you can get out of the season, regardless if you win a Big 12 or not, or get back in the race, one, you can be a spoiler, and the other, you can get this defense some experience and some leaders. Maybe a guy like Woody Washington steps to the forefront heading into next year.
No doubt. I mean, I think that when you are where Oklahoma was defensively, 7 days ago, more specifically like the last 3-4 years, you have to start developing leadership on that side of the ball. You have to start developing some of your younger players. And I think for the fan base, that's just what's frustrating out of the last 2 weeks. Like, why did it take losing the way that they did over the last 2 weeks to give a Woody Washington an opportunity, to give a Joshua Eaton an opportunity? I guess that's kind of nitpicking after a win like that, but, it is kind of the truth at the same time. And I think you're right, though, that they're trying to build something, and that was a good step forward. It was a good step in the right direction to get some good vibes on that side of the ball, and especially, I guess, in a way to, let's face it, they came up with 2 stops in the last 2 overtimes. They forced a field goal that was blocked, that Perry Winfrey got a hand on, and Perry Winfrey got the hand on that. I thought he had a pretty productive day, just overall. I thought Joshua Ellison had a pretty productive day on the defensive side of the ball as well. So, there's a lot to take out of that. And there's one more stat that was just insane to me that was texted to me during the game. Over the last 6 OU Texas games, this is including the Big 12 championship game in 2018, OU has lost the turnover battle 14-5, a combined 14-5, and OU is actually 5-1 in those games.
That's crazy.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Well, and I think, defensively, just to kind of cap it off, it was really good for a long time today, and then it wasn't. And I do think it's something that they can build on. It's something that can make them better. I mean, going into the stretch of TCU and Texas Tech, if they can get a couple of wins, they get back to 4-2, and you look good defensively doing it. Spencer Rattler continues to grow. That offense continues to find reliable weapons, and maybe Spencer Rattler starts getting confidence like, we're going to go out here and just score as many points as we want, because they are not there yet, not anywhere close. But they're closer than they were at that Kansas State game.
They're headed in the right direction. I mean, anybody that wants to just completely tear down the thing, you can. There's going to be people that are going to do that. But, I mean, in a way, they made the plays when they needed them the most today, I guess you could say. They had pressure on Ehlinger at times. They covered in the secondary. They didn't give up the big play. And I'll say it again, because I think that is something that has kind of hampered this team, specifically over the last 2 weeks and the losses to Kansas State and Iowa State, that you just had moments where you go, how does that happen? And it happened a couple times today but you also got to credit Texas. They're pretty good offensively. Now, the defensive side of the ball, that's a little bit of a question mark, but they overall it was a good performance, incredible win, and I think one that a lot of people will remember for a long time, and hopefully for this young group of guys that got a lot of playing time and are going to get a lot of playing time over the next few seasons. That's the future of the program. Hopefully that's a building point, and they can really kind of leap from what they were able to do today.
53-45, Sooners win it in quadruple overtime. This has been the Eskridge Lexus postgame podcast. Thanks to Eddie for taking the time out to join us after the game. We will be back. I don't know what our media schedule is going to be like this week, but certainly we'll have an unofficial 40 podcast where Josh and Bob will get to weigh in on this game as well, coming up on Wednesday. So looking forward to it, and looking forward to people just kind of being able to take a deep breath, know that it wasn't perfect, but at least it was a win, and it was especially a win over Texas, because Eddie, I can't imagine what Texas fans are feeling right now. They wanted to fire Tom Herman after last week. What do they want to do after today?
I mean, just a quick scan of the interwebs would tell you that, and I talked a little bit to Dustin McComas about this the other day. I jumped on a podcast with the Orange Blood folks, and they had lost half of the fan base before today. I can't imagine how bad it is on that side of the fence as they make their way back to Austin today down I-35, because that is, I don't know. He's got his work cut out with him, but you know what? I'll just say it. Good. He's a douchebag. I hate him.
By the way, very disappointing to see a young lady wearing a burnt orange flipping the bird at the end of that game, As you say,
were pretty hot, though.
Yeah, they were both pretty hot. But as you've always said, Eddie, we're always told that the horns down is a gateway gesture. Makes me think that horns up might be the same.
You might have a point. I might have to do a little investigation during the bye week.
I think everybody will look forward to that. All right, thanks everybody for listening. This one-of-a-kind podcast while on the road. I think we'll fix everything in post because it didn't go that smoothly, cell coverage and all that stuff. So, Eddie, I appreciate your patience tonight. I'm sure you've got the tall boys ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
Now that you're back from the parents' house.
No doubt.
I don't even want to know what the rest of your night entails.
Maybe you'll if people listen to this quick enough, maybe they'll see me out in downtown Oklahoma City tonight.
All right, Edward, I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday. And congratulations, Sooner fans. You have 2 weeks to enjoy something about OU football. A 53-45 win over the University of Texas in the Red River rivalry. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Eskridge Lexus postgame podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.